Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan Lugo. Thank you so much for tuning in here on Friday, June 21st. Hopefully everyone's able to have a fun, happy, safe weekend. Beat the heat, find a pool, keep your butt indoors, whatever you got to do to beat the heat out there. But today we're talking about the Jaguars and why they have been so active, so incredibly active in the wide receiver market this offseason. They've been so busy at the wide receiver position as soon as you said go this offseason and throughout. I mean, they just made a move at wide receiver yesterday. So it hasn't just been at the top of the roster or throughout the depth and middle of the roster at wide receiver or just at the bottom. It's been throughout the entire wide receiver room. If you are a wide receiver and you're available, whether it's been via the draft or free agency or, the second, third wave of free agency, undrafted free agency, the Jaguars have been interested. Bottom line. Now, why have they been so interested and active at every receiver who they can be interested in? For me, it's fairly obvious, and we're going to talk about that here today. So I really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out genjag.com/shop pickup, so new Duval gear. Become a channel member here on YouTube. So again, I think the answer is fairly obvious, but before we talk about the answer, I just want to recap just how busy the Jaguars actually have been at receiver this offseason. It's kind of crazy when you look at it. So they signed Gabe Davis as soon as free agency opened, legal tampering period. They agreed to terms with him. They also agreed to terms with Devin Duvernay. So that's two additions right there. Even after that, they still tried to drop a bag on Calvin Ridley. Got outbid by a division rival. That's how it goes sometimes, right? When you kind of misplay your hand. They wanted Ridley back, couldn't get him. When they couldn't get Ridley back, Trent Baalke did something as a general manager for the Jacksonville Jaguars that he has not done in over a decade. He drafted a first-round wide receiver. Not only has Baalke not drafted a wide receiver in the first round in over a decade, he had not drafted a wide receiver on the first 2 days of the draft, that's first, second, or third round, in over a decade. And he had only done it once before. It was A.J. Jenkins, who just so happens to be from Jacksonville. That was back when he was the San Francisco 49ers general manager. He went and drafted a first-round wide receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. when they had to pivot away from Calvin Ridley. So again, showing extreme intent on upgrading this wide receiver group. After that, they decided to release Zay Jones. I haven't heard this directly, but I think they were just kind of keeping him around as an insurance policy, a backup plan in case things didn't fall the way they wanted in the draft. Then right after the draft, Trent Baalke made Joshua Cephas a priority add in free agency, undrafted free agency. They also signed rookies Wayne Ruby, David White, who's from Jacksonville, Brevin Easton, and Joseph Skates. They then even brought in Jarvis Landry for a workout. Jarvis Landry, who has not played football since 2022. Missed the entire 2023 season, a good chunk at the back end of the 2022 season with an ankle injury. They did not sign Jarvis Landry, but they did bring him in for a workout. He's just not the fastest guy in the world at this point, and no shade on him. He's still clearly got the route running prowess and the hands, but I don't think that he was going to be a guy you wanted to put out there on special teams because of the injury history, and B, I just don't think he has the speed. He was never one of the faster receivers in the league. He was able to make up for it with his other skills, but at this point, they decided not to do anything on that front. And then when Wayne Ruby and David White both sustained injuries, the Jaguars, they were still ready to bring in more talent at the position. They brought in Austin Trammell and then Kyrick McGowan after Chandler Brewer hit injured reserve, so they continued to be active there. The Jaguars just recently decided they'd seen enough of McGowan for now. At least for now, again. He could come back. And they brought in Denzel Mims, a former second-round pick, who that's kind of a full circle moment for me because I was very high on him in the draft. The Jets ended up landing him in the second round. He's a guy that has size, length, athleticism. His highs at Baylor were unbelievable. He had a very nice Senior Bowl week. He ran well. Leading up to the draft, I was excited about him, and it hasn't worked out the way he would have liked so far in his NFL career. Now he's starting to bounce around a little bit, but He is in Jacksonville. We'll get to see him compete out there. The Jaguars were also reported to be strong players in the Brandon Ayuk trade talks before drafting Brian Thomas Jr. And then they reportedly worked out star UFL receiver Hakeem Butler. Led the league in receiving last year, the UFL. So they've been insanely busy at wide receiver. They just have been. They've been more busy at wide receiver than any other position group on the team by a wide margin. They have 10 wide receivers on the 90-man roster. Half of those guys were not in Jacksonville in any way, shape, or form before 2024. That is massive turnover. So, why the added emphasis at the position this year, this offseason? That's why we're all here, right? Hey, they needed to get better. They did. 2, they have a franchise quarterback who they now have invested a ton of money in and a ton of time and years into. They know that this team will go as Trevor Lawrence goes, and he needs to have upper echelon pass catchers and depth just in case. So they decided we're going to revamp this wide receiver room in a big way. Outside of Christian Kirk, we need to change things here. And the group last year, they just didn't mesh and complement each other's skill sets the way the Jaguars would have liked. And that might have been a miscalculation by coaching, by management. Calvin Ridley just didn't quite fit as an X receiver the way the Jaguars were using him. He made a lot of mistakes in his own right. So they decided, and they still wanted to keep him after that. And I talked about this yesterday, maybe Wednesday. I think the Jaguars' plan was, we know we didn't use Calvin Ridley properly in 2023. That's why Gabe Davis is coming in to be the X receiver, the guy on the line of scrimmage. We're going to be able to move Calvin Ridley around the formation now, keep him off the line, get him free releases, and let him do work. And hopefully another year in this system, another year actually playing football, and you get the best out of Calvin Ridley. That's what the Jaguars were hoping for. They weren't able to retain him. Titans got him. So they went and got their guy, Brian Thomas Jr., in the first round. But again, it basically just comes down to supporting Trevor Lawrence. He is an insanely talented deep ball passer, and they just did not have the guys last year to thrive in that area of the field. So you go get him some guys who can stretch the field. Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas Jr. Devin Duvernay hasn't been used a ton as a deep ball receiver, but he brings a lot of speed to the table as well. As a guy a little bit down the depth chart. So you have guys that can stretch the field, guys that can complement Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, and you make sure at the back end of it that it's hard as hell to make this roster because of the competition. It's going to be very solid competition. Whoever makes it as wide receiver 5, 6, and 7, if they keep 7, they kept 7 last year. Usually teams keep 6. Usually Doug Peterson teams have kept 6, but he's kept 7 a couple times as a head coach. We'll see how it plays out. But whoever makes the back end of this roster at receiver, they will have earned it. Because Parker Washington, he had some big-time moments as a rookie. He is a talented player. He made some mistakes as a rookie, wasn't always in the right place at the right time when he was called upon later in the season, but he's a talented football player. Elijah Cooks, a fantastic big body, jump ball, box you out type of skill set that he brings to the table. Undrafted free agent last year, shined throughout training camp, shined throughout the preseason, did not get much run in the regular season. You bring in Joshua Cephas, as I mentioned, who is extremely well-rounded. You go back and watch him at UTSA, watch him at the Shrine Bowl. This guy knows how to play receiver. Tim Jones, who is a special teams ace. Denzel Mims, who we just talked about. Maybe one of his last chances in the league. We'll see how it plays out. And Seth Williams still on the roster, who impressed in camp last year. He was absolutely fighting for a roster spot. And then Austin Trammell, who we mentioned, who has played in the league and gotten meaningful reps for the Rams. So you know that he's a smart football player. It's going to be tough to make the back end of the roster at wide receiver. I think Parker Washington is close to a lock at wide receiver 5. I think it would take something really surprising for him to not be the wide receiver 5. And I think Joshua Cephas should have the upper hand at wide receiver 6, but you also have to have that special teams value. Can he prove that he can get it done on special teams for the Jaguars the way a Tim Jones can, right? And maybe they keep 7. We'll see how it plays out. But whoever makes this roster out of this bunch, they will have earned it because the competition absolutely is there. And again, you have your guys at the top, which that's more important than the depth, but the depth is important as well. You have your guys that can get vertical in Gabe Davis, who is going to be playing a lot of X, going to be on the line of scrimmage. He has the physicality, the size to get past press coverage. And then you have Brian Thomas Jr., who should be getting a lot of off coverage. He should be, again, playing the Z more often than not and being able to move around the formation, getting some free releases the way they planned to get Calvin Ridley free this offseason. Obviously couldn't keep Ridley. Christian Kirk, excellent slot receiver, one of the most underrated players in the league. And Evan Ingram, who is one of the best receivers at tight end in football. So yeah, they're making sure that Trevor Lawrence has the tools around him to succeed. And I think they've done that when it comes to pass protection as well, but we're talking about the receivers here. Because if Trevor Lawrence succeeds, this team will do the same. Bottom line. And I know it's not as simple as if your quarterback plays well, you're going to win football games, but it kind of is. This defense is talented enough that if Trevor Lawrence plays well, and I think the defense is going to be well coached enough with Ryan Nielsen, that if Trevor Lawrence plays well, and the pieces around him play well and allow him to put up the numbers that he is capable of, they're going to win football games. They're going to win a lot of football games. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you enjoy the content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. You can also check out genjag.com/shop, pick up some new Duval gear, become a channel member here on YouTube, get access to some cool perks, including discounts over at genjag.com. Y'all have a good one.